Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Local podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich, clipboard owner. I have bought a clipboard in.
Yeah. It's got it's got rules down the side, not rulers.
Oh yeah, my clipboard ain't playing.
Yeah. So I was always taught in DT class by my teacher. It was like, so whenever you said, "Oh, can I pass a ruler?" he was always like, "It's a rule, not a ruler. Like a king is a ruler." And I'm like, but he would say that every fucking time. And I'm like, "All right, Mr. Found, like we get that's your shtick. We get it, man." Do you know what I mean? It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's Christmas. Happy Christmas to you.
Christmases and stuff.
Well, I think it'll be the last time I see you before Christmas. So
yeah, probably.
Happy Christmas to you.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas to our listeners.
Yeah, or whatever you choose to celebrate.
Yeah.
Or not celebrate.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So it is the most wonderful time of the year for us as well, from a podcast point of view, because we like to take, as previously advertised for the last couple of weeks, all of our games from the whole of the year.
It's a time for taking stock, isn't it? Really.
And what we like to do is try and do something. I don't know if it's a little bit different or not, but basically all of the scores that we have given over the year, they are obviously in a category. I did this last year. I explained numbers to people. I'll explain numbers to people again.
Cool.
We have ranked them between 0 and 10.
We'll do some more tea.
And if you fall in a certain bracket, 8 for example, which I'm looking at is massive, then we are trying to score the way through that bracket to find, I guess, the king and or queen of that bracket from the game. So judged kind of on our scores at the time and our reviews, but I was just saying before the podcast, my memory is shot to shit. Like I cannot remember what I discussed at any point.
I was looking through this list earlier, and a couple of times I was looking at it and going like, those scores are so wrong. This is why I hate scoring.
Yeah, but that's what I like about it. It's like, because almost this is a bit of a way for...
it's an audit, Faz. Call it what it is. It's a fucking audit.
You've got the clipboard. But
it's an audit. We're doing an audit.
I love it. Tax returns. I think you do, in some fashion, get to pick one game that you can kind of rise to the top of that bracket and almost push it up and say, this is the real worthy champion of this bracket. It just kind of leaves all the rest of the games in its wake, which is crazy. I do think, though, that we can have one mulligan each. So I've been thinking about this for like 7 months, regretting review scores here, there and everywhere. I think that at any one point during this process, we are allowed to say, I think this game belongs in a different bracket.
Oh, okay.
So not to put an arbitrary rule on it, like I have put arbitrary numbers onto our podcast, but I think that we probably have to say that before. So whenever we get to that bracket that it's in, we need to say stop.
Declare it there.
This is my mulligan.
Can't wait till the end.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
This is where I think it should go. There should be no qualms about that, unless you're going to push a fucking 0 to a 10 or something crazy like that. That is never maybe need to talk about it a little bit. But I think definitely we need to state what the game is, why we think it needs to move, or even just like what we think you're going to move it to, and then we can pop it in that bracket and discuss it when it gets there. So if you feel super firmly about a game has to go up or down, then you could do. Because the thing is, as well, you might pick a game and go, actually, that's probably a little bit worse than what I remember, and I could pop it down a bracket even and make it the king of the bad bracket.
Right.
Which is what, that's what the kids all used to... say in the 90s probably. King of the bad bracket.
King of the bad bracket.
So just before we start, I am going to give a little bit of our Spotify Wrapped, but it's not Wrapped because they don't give you any good stats necessarily. So I've come up with these stats. I will go through our scoring from last year. Right. And what we give the games last year and our games of each bracket last year, because I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit of a recap. And then just a couple of stats about our podcast from 2024. So, last year, running in ascending order, again, numbers. 0 out of 10, Paratopic won the 0 out of 10 game. Basically, the worst game, the best worst game that we played last year, but I think it was the only thing that was in 0, I think, maybe.
I think it might have been.
The Sims 2 PSP port, I will be strange to say, because a lot of people are like, The Sims 2 got 1 out of 10, but the PSP port did, because of inability to play. Ridge Racer on the Vita, won the 2 out of 10 bracket. Call of Duty Black Ops on the Vita won the 3 out of 10 bracket. The Sega Mega Drive Collection won the 4 out of 10 bracket. That's the PSP version. The Lion King won the 5 out of 10 bracket. And then we had a lot of discussion about the Lion King. It was probably the most discussed game, I would say, because
because anybody that plays it still gets flashbacks.
well, you'd personally put it in the 2 out of 10 bracket. I put it in 5 out of 10. And Sunset, your cat, had wagged her tail 9 times to put it in the 9 out of 10 bracket.
Oh, yeah, and we split the difference.
Exactly, yeah. So we did.
Cats.
Yeah, but Lion King won 5 out of 10. Overboard on the PlayStation 1, the pirate game, won the 6 out of 10 bracket, and I decided that that's probably the most 6 out of 10 game I've ever played, and it still might be. We'll have to see this year. Pokemon Yellow won the 7 out of 10, and we to'd and fro'd about that, and also it's sort of, I guess it's probably fiercest rival was Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. You sort of the other week said, you were like, oh yeah, actually you actually came down on Pokemon Yellow. You were the one that made the decision to say Pokemon Yellow was more 7 out of 10 King than Phoenix Wright. So I just want that on record, that I think that you thought that maybe you were Ace Attorney's side, but in the end, you said Pokemon Yellow, 7 out of 10. So, yeah, stand by that.
I mean, I don't care.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. I'm really thankful about that. Co-host doesn't care. Okay, so things you might care about then. Funnily enough, the 8 out of 10 was quite hotly contested as well. So it ended up being Turnip Boy commits tax evasion.
Okay.
So over Ridge Racer PSV Eindhoven, on the PSP. You wanted to put Ridge Racer PSP as the best 8 out of 10 game. I had it in the 7 out of 10 game bracket, so I wasn't as in agreement. But we ended up plumping for Turnip Boy. I don't think at the time you played through Turnip Boy commits tax evasion.
No, but I have since.
You have?
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely up there. I still think Ridge Racer should have won it because I've spent the last year thinking it did.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm sorry.
So basically, I think what I'm realising now is that, as far as I'm aware, in my head, all of the winners from the various brackets last year were the ones I was talking about. And I know that's wrong because you're reading out a load that were not to do with me.
No,
so basically what I'm saying is that I can't remember shit.
No, I think that, so what happened was that in the end, I was a bit like, I don't know if this is definitely the right one. I'm happy to put this forward. And I think you were just so amicable and you kind of went, actually. So, for example, 9 out of 10, it ended up being Outrun versus Papers, Please. And I think that, so I reviewed Outrun, you reviewed Papers, Please, but actually I think we almost ended up on opposite sides of each other. I probably would have plumbed for Papers, Please, but then I think you kind of came down on Outrun and thinking there needs to be a good arcade game in here, and that was kind of your reasoning for ending up with Outrun. But both of them, great 9 out of 10 games for us. So, it ended up with Outrun being the 9 out of 10 champion. And then Castlevania Symphony of the Night was the 10 out of 10 game, which you said as recently as a couple of weeks ago might be one of your favourite games, if not your favourite game ever. So that probably worked out quite well.
Well, it did for me, yeah.
Yeah, it did for you.
I had a lovely time.
Well, it just shows that, I think in the end it was kind of an even sort of split across the board. I think that you end up with the better, worse games. Is it almost the kings of the worst games? Is it?
I don't know. I think that partly might be down to my ability to bitch about stuff people love.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's okay.
See also The Lion King.
It's so funny because I'll see on our socials all the time. I'm like. So, for example, when we advertised the last podcast that came out, the Modern Warfare 2 campaign remastered, and immediately someone's commenting and saying, "Oh yeah, what a great game!" And I'm like, and listen to the podcast because
I mean, it is
the initial game is the original.
I was going to say it is, but the remaster done the original dirty a little bit. Just cutting out so much of the important stuff.
No, which is fair enough. Couple of weird stats at all, sort of, and not even important stats, just stats, just solid stats. So we kind of trade ourselves as a bit of a PSP, PS Vita podcast, so we certainly have for the first couple of years. I think we'll probably slow down on the PS Vita, and we've discussed this previously.
Running out of Vita games to play.
Yeah, it does feel that way. It feels like the bigger hitters aren't as, you start to get into a lot more you start to understand that the Vita really felt like a Japanese-centric sort of Sony handheld, and that didn't feel like they'd done as good a job of
I don't know if I'd say that.
Okay.
What I would say...
That was my brain, sorry. You say your brain, I say no brain.
I say my brain. My brain say that I think it was of its time. And don't get me wrong, I still got a soft spot for it, but I think this whole sort of couple of year journey has made me realise that actually the industry's moved on.
Yeah.
Like, I've moved on. My tastes are very different now. It's not you, it's me kind of territory. I've got a lot of fond memories about it, but I definitely am not as sold on it as once I was, because the landscape has changed so much and what you can play handheld has changed so much, and my ability to play it physically has changed.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of factors that have kind of dampened my enthusiasm for it. And that's fine, because, we move on, things change, and it's been good to go back and look and realise that a lot of it was, misty-eyed nostalgia for, all those hours spent playing it on coaches and trains and all that kind of stuff. It's been really interesting to go back and reevaluate it.
Yeah. And I think that sort of means that going forward, we probably will just touch a little bit less on the Vita. I still find the PSP still giving me gifts, if you will, of things that I've not played and stuff. So if I'm going to be honest, that is in, and it's not to say that we kind of can't share that, but I've kind of predominantly done PSP and you've done PS Vita, and we'll probably just pick from the same pool a bit more often. I
think that's probably the easiest way, isn't it?
But of all the games that we've played, we've reviewed of this year, certainly. So it's about 113-ish. I say ish because have I missed something from the list? There's demo discs, etc. Kind of like might muddy the water a little bit. I think 113 games is how many we have reviewed this year. Even 37% of those games have been PSP or PS Vita. Yep. So that's a pretty good chunk. I think that over a third of the games we can produce ourselves. As a promote ourselves even, as being PSP, PS Vita. Our average joint score across all of the games that we've reviewed this year, 6.95 was what it worked out to be. So whilst I am always at pains to be like, oh, we score, we score harshly, and we're different from gaming magazines and stuff. We're not we're not beholden by anybody coming and putting money in our pockets and saying, give us a good review. And yet, average score 7 out of 10, which feels like the average of what most,
which ain't shit.
Who knew?
I'll tell you what though, just to go back to the number of PSP and Vita games we've played, if we were sausages and PSP and Vita were the meat in that, and the rest of it was rusk, could we legally be called sausages? That feels like a very low percentage.
Oh no, I think that's a high percentage for a sausage. Yeah, absolutely. What kind of sausages are you getting?
Well, I don't know. It's a genuine question.
I genuinely think that if you're anywhere near over 20% of actual sausage meat, you're probably a really premium sausage,
decent sausage.
Yeah, I think
we're an okay sausage.
I'd say we're like a Richmond style sausage, probably, which would work out well.
And that's how we got our first sponsorship deal. Oh, God. Can we crack on? Are we there
You're
yet?
Rich and I'm Mond. Welcome.
Oh, fucking hell. No.
Which decade do you think that we have reviewed games from the most? Out of, say, 90s, noughties, etc.
It's fine. I know what decades are. Thank you for explaining numbers again. I'm going to go, 2010s?
So noughties.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
Again,
wasn't far off then.
Around 37%, weirdly enough. So
I bet we peak around that sort of 2006 to 2009
Well,
mark.
that would make sense, wouldn't
we
it?
were at uni and stuff,
exactly.
thereabouts, weren't we?
And we've hit a lot of the sort of PSP and stuff. That makes sense. So, that was interesting. So, our longest podcast, not this one, before you'd be fucking smart ass over there. So it was number 84, so quite recently, Ace Attorney Investigations, Majora's Mask, and Professor Layton and the Curious Village at a large 108 minutes.
Jesus.
So
what are we doing to these people?
I would say that Fiona's effusiveness for Phoenix Wright and my contempt for Professor Layton probably lent to that. I think your Majora's Mask review was like 10 minutes at the end.
Good.
Yeah, one of the best games ever made. Oh, in 10 minutes on it.
That's fine. What more can I say?
Our shortest podcast, 32 minutes, which is our...
that's a blessing.
Yes.
More of them.
Our retro gaming roundup, which was just off the hoof before the Leeds Beer Festival.
Oh, right, yeah, that
Mostly because I deleted our most listened to podcast, kind of. So our most listened to podcast of the year, we re-recorded, and it became our most listened to of this year.
Really?
Yes. Siphon Filter on PS1 and Siphon Filter on the PSP and Unit 13 on the PS Vita was our most listened to podcast this year, followed by Grand Theft Auto 4 episodes of Liberty City, Duke Nukem Forever and Brutal Legend, which featured Hakers.
Yep.
We had a good listenership to the Tomb Raider podcast that we did. So Tomb Raider 2, Tomb Raider Anniversary and Tomb Raider Legend. Final Fantasy, one of the Final Fantasies seemed to perform, so we did that right at the start of the year with Fiona.
Yeah, that was early on, wasn't it?
And the one that performed better than the other by a few listens was the Final Fantasy Tactics, the Final Fantasy 7 Reunion, Crisis Core, and Final Fantasy 15. And Killzone as well, so our Killzone Mercenary, which, obviously you've got great love for the PS Vita, and Killzone Liberation on the PSP did well. Our 5 worst episodes, so these are just general regrets, it seems like, for most people. So, these are all around, like sort of 16, 17 people have listened to these, and you think that one of those listens is definitely me reviewing it. So
I think one of them will be my parents.
Yeah. So just knock a few off. There's probably like a few people, a handful of people listen to these ones. Some of them are surprising, to be honest. Some of them aren't. So, I would say the non-surprising ones. So one was the Do Something Unexpected, where we talked, and it's a bit annoying really, because we did talk about our Raiden 4 rivalry in that one, which was quite fun to talk about our shmup Raiden 4
for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Fortnite and Switch Ring Fit adventure. That wasn't well listened to. And then there's a couple of recent ones, which I'm surprised about. Punch Out and Beast Wrestler. I kind of get why that might not be necessarily a really well-covered game and a game that no one's ever heard of, sort of. Everyone's talked about Punch-Out, loads. Bioshock Remastered and Trepang 2, again, not very well listened to. That's quite a recent one. It might just be sort of a recency bias with that. People might pick it up. A couple one that I would expect to not have a lot of people listen to, but scored very highly for us as games, and they'll come up in this podcast. Hatful Boyfriend and Ollie Ollie World.
Oh, yeah.
I think they both received 9 out of 10 from us, there or thereabouts. It was maybe 8 or 9s out of 10s. So good games, but not massive listenership. But I'm not surprised, because a lot of people probably haven't heard those games, but you should.
I was going to say, I think if you're going to play Hatful Boyfriend, you probably already have.
Yeah.
I get that.
I mean, Ollie Ollie World, I spoke about it the other week. I think it's like £5 occasionally on like Xbox or PlayStation stores or Switch. Just totally go and buy it if you can. And the other one that I was surprised about was Balatro and The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Deluxe, which is like our lowest listened to podcast of the year, which I was a bit like, oh, okay, interesting, because again, you got a classic, I would say, in the deluxe version of Link's Awakening, and obviously that's now become a Switch game remake. And Balatro, which at the time had a lot of pop.
But I think that's probably why people didn't listen to this. They don't need to. You can get that information pretty handily. It was everywhere at that point. So no, I get that,
which is fair enough.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was our year wrapped up.
Yep.
And that's just so
year of my life. I'm never getting back. Summed up in a handful of numbers and a couple of bullet points. Thank you. What could I have learnt in all those hours? Think how good I'd be at guitar. Yeah. Well, would you be a Brutal Legend level? Who knows? Or a Guitar Hero level? 2 games that we are going to talk about in a little while. So, in fact, everything's covered here. You could just say anything in any sentence, and I could just relate it to a game that we've played this year. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, please do. Let's start from the bottom, work our way up to the top like we did last year, towards the real hero games. So, at the 0 bracket, Carmageddon 64 on the N64 and Rookie Boxing on the Switch, which I didn't want scored, but you did score it. I played that recently in November, paid £2 for it, and it is legitimately the worst game I've ever played. It is broken to the core of not being a game, really, and I still want my money back from Nintendo. I'm not sure if I'll ever get it. I wanted my 89p back for Paratopic. I want that back less than I want my £2 for the Rookie Boxing that I played.
I mean, £2 is an investment, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And what a shit investment it was.
Fair enough.
What about Carmageddon 64 then? Do we think that just walks straight into being the best 0 out of 10 game that we've played this year?
I think it walks in by dint of Rookie Boxing being worse.
Yeah.
I think it's... Yeah, like... I feel less overtly angry about wanting my money back from it. I feel oddly zen about it. Like it's something. It's an event that I lived through.
I find
it's something that happened.
Yeah. I find it highly interesting that I would say that Rookie Boxing and Paratopic were so incomplete as games and made by clearly made by amateur people. That is in, they weren't actually made by a company, and yet Carmageddon 64 must be bad enough to have been an actual major game and still slot in there.
Yeah.
So, that just shows you.
It's still my favourite N64 magazine review of all time, because it's just, it's great.
Oh man, yeah, if you do get a chance to go back to listen to that podcast, that's probably the best part, I think, when you talk about the N64 review of that. So
my personal favourite.
Let's move up the ladder then. 1 out of 10 this year. Beast Wrestler, we just mentioned it previously, from the Mega Drive, and Dead or Alive Paradise for the PSP. Have you got any strong feelings about either of these games, about why they would be the best 1 out of 10 game that we've played this year?
So, from what I can remember of you saying about Dead or Alive Paradise, like there's not a heck of a lot of like game to it, really, but the graphics might be good.
Yeah, because it's effectively pornography. That's why. You know how it's sort of something they have a. Clearly, the game makers are like, "Oh, this is definitely what people want," and you're like, "This is and then as a consumer, you're like, "This is the thing that makes me feel the most awkward I've ever felt." I am
never playing this on a bus.
Yeah. I feel really bad about myself, and that's not just me kind of being a bit sort of soft about it nowadays and stuff like that. No, I genuinely felt truly awful playing that game, and I think I spent about an hour and 12 minutes with it or something, and I was like, I didn't need to spend any more with it, or any. I didn't want to spend any time with it, really. Well,
I would say let's give it to Dead or Alive Paradise because it made you feel something, even if that was remorse and shame.
That's fine. It's okay. I love that. This is why I like doing this exercise, because then that could be the review of that game. That isn't, like,
made me feel something.
yeah. Just shame. Just shame. So. We're moving up a little bit, I think. I think the quality of the game jumps up a little bit, and there's probably more discussion here. So we have 4 games in the 2 out of 10 bracket. The Simpsons game on but that's specifically the PSP port. Brian Lara Cricket, again, specifically the PSP port. Dungeon Hunter Alliance for the PS Vita, and Street Fighter. I believe that's the original arcade version. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, again, much like I had last year when I talked about a lot of the games that kind of The Sims 2, Parappa the Rapper, for example, the base games of Brian Lara Cricket and The Simpsons game, like on the PS3 and the Wii and things, I've played both sort of versions of those games, and they're really good. That is, they are at the other end of the scale, 7, 8 out of 10s. So to have these really depressing returns on the PSP of somebody not to understand how they can port a game to it, and it feels like it's missing half a game for Brian Lara, for example. And The Simpsons felt extremely difficult to complete because you can't get the camera angles right to be able to do the platforming. The platforming's really poor. Whilst I felt shame for Dead or Alive Paradise, these made me feel like, I don't. Like that. So that was the noise that came out of me. Ugh. Yeah. So I don't know if you have a stronger feeling about, the other two.
What's going on here? Yeah. So
mine. Yeah.
Well, I've not played your 2. full disclosure.
Lucky you.
Dungeon Hunter Alliance, like Carmageddon 64 might have been broken as all hell, but Dungeon Hunter Alliance was still more boring. Somehow. Like, at least Carmageddon 64 had a bit of character to it. Like, broken as hell, but there was some character there. Dungeon Hunter Alliance might be one of, if not the most dull games I've ever played. And like, I get no pleasure on dunking on other people's work, right? Someone grafted on this. But nonetheless, it just doesn't come together like you would like. Street Fighter, you can tell they were trying to do something new, something different. I think, for me, Street Fighter is a really strong candidate for winning this category, just because Street Fighter 2 has to be one of the most improved sequels of all time.
Yeah.
And not only that, but without Street Fighter 1...
well, that's it. It has to come from somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And they were trying to innovate, I think, and it didn't quite work.
I was going to say...
see what they were trying to do.
If you were going to just sum it up in a quick nutshell... what is it that makes Street Fighter 2 so vastly, to the point where it's one of your favourite games ever, certain versions are, like, as in what makes that so different from Street Fighter that's going to convince me that, Street Fighter's got good seeds?
You can select different characters.
Excellent, good.
There are different backdrops. You can have... you have a easier time of putting in special moves and stuff like that. They are less likely to just outright reject what you're trying to do. So it plays so much better. Like, it's difficult for me to describe it without getting into nauseating detail about like frames and all this kind of stuff. There's no need for that. But Street Fighter is so strict. Like, the original arcade game is so strict. It's very difficult to pull off a lot of stuff. Not impossible. Just over time, you can tell they start to dial in what they were trying to do and make it a bit more accessible. And not only that, but because you have that broader range of characters and fighting styles, you have a broader range of inputs. So if you're not quite gelling with one character, you can try somebody else and it might go a bit better. There's none of that in Street Fighter. Like the original, like, if you're not able to do what you want to do there and then, that's it. Like, you're just not going to get on with it.
And yet I still feel more affinity for those few sentences than I do for either of the games that I played. And I'm going to be honest as well, like, there couldn't be more of a boring title of a game for me than Dungeon Hunter Alliance. That is in, like, I struggled to even finish that sentence there. That when we did those Alliance games, when we did Marvel Ultimate Alliance and then in that same podcast you reviewed Thank Goodness You're Here, and I was so much more entertained by that, as we'll find out later on, than I was. So I'm quite happy to put Street Fighter as our best 2 out of 10 game that has been played this year.
Works for me.
Excellent. Okay, we're flying through these. This is brilliant. It's all going to go wrong real soon. So 3 out of 10 even, sorry. Interesting that I see some, what I'd class as alright games here. So we always say that kind of 5 out of 10 and above is you can recommend that game. So we're still saying we don't necessarily recommend these games. I can already see one that you're going to go out to bat for straight away. So I think we'll probably come to that one towards the end. So the list then: Sonic Rivals on the PSP, Me and My Katamari on the PSP, Bloodshore, which was the interactive FMV game movie that I played. And Crazy Taxi Fair Wars on the PSP. Again, that's the PSP port that I'm disappointed with rather than anything. They were the 4 that I played. The ones that Rich played then: Borderlands 2 on the PS Vita, Duke Nukem Forever on the PC on the Steam Deck, I believe that was. Frobisher Says on the PS Vita, which we've reviewed recently, and then last week Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered Campaign played on the PS4. So I think the game that you want to win this, I'm just reading your mind from what you said in the podcast and review, would be Duke Nukem Forever.
Yep, bang on.
I think that you felt that we scored it too harshly. I've tried to look around a little bit about Duke Nukem Forever after that podcast, because we were like, because we kind of, me and Hakers both sort of said, well, we both agreed pretty quickly on 3 out of 10. And then I remember you kind of sort of looking a bit, revolted and sort of like...
I had a little cry.
Yeah.
I had a little cry.
But,
it deserved a 4 or a 5. It didn't deserve a 3.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. I mean, is there anything else in here that I think should at least have a say? in this from the exact same podcast, actually, Crazy Taxi Fair Wars. You know, the reason that I gave it 3 out of 10, or at least you guys kind of give it 3 out of 10, but I was sort of leaning towards that myself anyway, was that it was a straight port of the Dreamcast games, but nothing had changed in sort of 10 years, and it felt like there should have been some sort of progression, and you could just tell the age of the game between, you know, the coming out in 2001, 7 years later, whatever it was, on the PSP. I just felt like there just wasn't enough there wasn't enough meat in the bone for it. But that said, it's still Crazy Taxi.
It's Crazy Taxi.
And it's a good port. Like, there's, like, it wasn't the same reasons, like I've just said before, the Simpsons game, for example, or something like, you know, Brian Lara. So it wasn't that the game was badly ported. It was pretty much sort of like for like, if you will, with a couple of the extra bits in there, but just not enough to make it anything worthwhile, comparative to what I've enjoyed about Crazy Taxi previously.
So, big question then, and I'm sure I asked this at the time, but for the life of me, I can't remember what you said. The soundtrack for Crazy Taxi, is it...
So it's not the same one.
Not the same.
But it is still of the ilk, so it's still punk rock.
Yeah,
and there's still some Offspring songs on there, for example.
Okay,
it just isn't the exact one. And if anything, I would say there are more songs on this version in terms of amount. Because I think on the original version, the original Crazy Taxi, I think there's only 4 songs.
It's like half of Ixnay on the Ombre or something like that, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's like, so there's only, I can't remember who the other band is. There's literally just Offspring and another band. And I can't remember.
Should know.
And it's like, so, and they have like say like 4 songs each. It's tiny, whereas this had a lot more to it. So actually, there was probably, I wouldn't say a better soundtrack, because what's better than that soundtrack?
Well, quite.
But at the same time, there was certainly a little bit more variance. So that wasn't something that brought it down.
You know, I think you've convinced me. I think Crazy Taxi gets it.
Really?
Yeah. Like, much as like my affinity with Duke Nukem Forever is not necessarily what is in Duke Nukem Forever. It's what Duke Nukem Forever could be or could have led to, or, you know, they kind of got close with the DLC at the end where it was just a lot more focused and tighter and all that kind of stuff.
I remember you saying at the time that felt good, comparative.
It's that squandered potential that brings me down. Whereas Crazy Taxi is Crazy Taxi. Yeah,
and that's the thing, isn't it? It's a bit silly, because it's like, so we're saying that Crazy Taxi is the best 3 out of 10 game that we've played this year, which obviously is damning with faint praise, but at the same time, it does feel like it not that it stands out per se in there, but I mean, there might be some other games in there that we're not given any sort of their dues. I mean, we'll probably come to the Katamaris, I think, later on, because we did about 4 or 5 Katamaris. Now, the reason me and my Katamari was so poor for me on the PSP was how crippling it is to try and use those weird controls to roll your Katamari around. It did not do anything for me. I get
that. If you've only got the one stick and all that kind of stuff, and if the controls are wrong, it's going to be difficult.
And I admired what Bloodshot did. It was just shit. It's just shit.
It tried.
Yeah.
It tried.
So I'm happy with that.
Crazy Taxi?
Yeah, Crazy Taxi for the PSP. Fair Wars is our best 3 out of 10 game of the year. Wonderful. Okay, so we are going to, for this exercise, ignore the demo discs because we can't remember what's on them.
Yep.
But, you know, they are scattered throughout the scoring. I just won't reference them. We might come back to them at some point and sort of maybe look at them again or something and maybe score them. I don't know. But for now, in the 4 out of 10 category then, we've got Touch My Katamari for the PS Vita, International Track and Field for the Game Boy, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order for the PC Steam Deck, and Professor Layton and the Curious Village for the Nintendo DS. Some, would you call them big hitters in there? Almost like a couple of big hitters.
Some notable names.
Yeah,
they all are, I guess.
Yeah. Do you want to touch on yours then? So yours were, funny enough, Touch My
Katamari
and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah. So Touch My Katamari. I think my big issue with it was by this point, the Katamari thing was starting to feel a little bit stale.
Yeah.
And then you add in this kind of confusing set of microtransactions and things like that, and ways of unlocking bits and bobs, and this whole thing you can do where you can like stretch out the Katamari or concertina it up a little bit and all that kind of stuff. And it just felt like it was a bit of a swing and a miss. It was kind of too much going on at the same time, not enough of what drew me to it in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a noble effort, but it just fell short. Fallen Order should have been an Indiana Jones game. Mm-hmm. Like if Fallen Order was an Indiana Jones game, you are like, that is rocketing up the list. It just would make. I'm utterly convinced it would make so much more sense as an Indiana Jones game.
It'd be interesting to see if are you planning on playing Indiana Jones at all?
If I get to it, I get to it. I wasn't going to go out of my way, really. Yeah. I don't know if I've got anything that I can play it on. I think I can. I don't know if it's running okay on Steam Deck yet. I've heard mixed things to not good things about it.
Okay, fair enough. It'd be interesting to see if you did play it and kind of go, "Oh, this should have been
a Star Wars game."
A Star Wars game.
Yeah, I do wonder. But yeah, I mean, I think Fallen Order and Touch My Katamari, I guess, to a lesser degree, I can absolutely see why somebody would play something like Fallen Order and absolutely fall in love with it.
Yeah.
I really genuinely can. I could see why somebody would have it as their favourite game ever. I can see why most people would have any of these games that we've reviewed. Mm-hmm. Even Carmageddon 64, there is a case to be made for that to be someone's best game of all time.
We'll definitely offended some people by having some of these games down.
No, it's not about offending anybody or anything like that. Like, each of them still, even the 0 out of 10 ones, have some kind of redeeming quality to them.
Yeah.
And I think down this end of the list, Fallen Order has more than most. Mm-hmm. Would it be my pick for best of our 4 out of 10s? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's an easy, immediate sell for me. I'm waiting to be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think I remember, because I scored that, and I think that maybe we thought that was going to actually get a little bit higher. Maybe a 5, I think, was going to be something that you had in your head. So I was a bit like, oh, maybe that would have been a certain sort of, a home run for this. But it's interesting that you said that it isn't. So the 2 that I played then, Professor Layton and the Curious Village, I was annoyed that I didn't enjoy that game as much as I wanted to. So I think I said at the time that the story is really, really fun and the artwork's really, really fun and you can live in the world of the characters. But it's so in 2024, so arduous, like clicking the screen and getting the coin hints, and the puzzles were so twattish, like, oh, look at us, we're so clever, but we're not really, like, as in, and I still can't get over the some of the quotes where it's just like, oh, look, Luke, there's a chair, that reminds me of this puzzle. I'm like, no, it fucking doesn't. Like, it's so stupid. Like, why would that make any sense? And it was like, and I was trying to collect things to put in my house that I don't really understand to like have in my room. It was like, oh, you've won a chair or something, or it felt like I can totally see that. Probably now, and without even looking, I bet the iOS game looks absolutely incredible. Like, and it probably plays much better, and they've probably made it a lot more sort of, I guess, modern, if you will, and all the other Laytons that have come along, I'm sure they're great. But the fact that I was seeing still people kind of going, oh, this is like, I'd say probably the second or third best Layton, and I'm like, this is the second or third out of a series of sort of 7 or 8, and this is the second or third best offering. I'm not that interested in Mr. Layton's.
I'm good, thank you.
Like, I think, listen, I didn't hate it. It just wasn't what I wanted it to be at all. The one that's a bit of a wild card in here is the International Track and Field, but for the Game Boy, because the actual International Track and Field that we all know and love, where you just absolutely hammer the buttons and
ruin your controllers.
Yeah. And like you said at the time, isn't it difficult to try and do that on a Game Boy, especially a Game Boy Pocket that I was playing on? Yes, it was. I couldn't see what was going on. There was no actual competition to me just going and actually end up like last in the race and going, huh? So the main core game of International Track and Field, that part of it's shit and awful and played with stickmen. The weird quasi sort of Sims light story that you have in your training when you suddenly get convinced by a mad scientist at the university you're training at that you should take these drugs, that you should take some drugs to make yourself better and improve your stamina and your strength, and you can get into a relationship like a weird sort of like either boyfriend or girlfriend relationship with whoever you choose, like as in almost where you can only ring them on a Sunday. Like it's just like, and then if you accidentally do that, then you'll end up missing training, and then your coach is mad at you. All that part of it was brilliant. It just wasn't international track and field. It was so strange that they kind of had this. I think I said at the time, it was almost like Hatful Boyfriend. You kind of had this sort of PowerPoint
deranged
almost
dating sim
on the side of, you know, a really well-known international track and field game. So it was just such a strange experience. But it was individual, and there's highs in there and there's lows.
Well, I've made up my mind. I don't know about you. I would give it to international track and field personally. I really would.
I thought that as soon as I started speaking about that, I was thinking Rich likes that.
yeah, like that is absolutely like what I go for. You know, I'm a sucker for that shit. Like, let's do it.
I'm going to be honest. That's the first time out of a bracket so far where I've been like, yeah, no, I'm happy to see that win. And I guess it's probably one of those things that, you know, how many people have played International Track and Field on the Game Boy? If you haven't, I recommend having a little dabble. Stay away from the main part of the game and do the weird sort of career mode. You'll enjoy it. Okay, so we start to get bulky now.
Can I check how this mulligan thing is working, please?
Okay, so what you need to do is, if you see a game, for example, in this bracket, and you kind of go, I think that should be somewhere else, like guaranteed. Anywhere else. You don't have to worry about it being one down or anything.
Okay.
You kind of go, I think that either me or you at one point, or someone else on the podcast has reviewed that with a bad score.
Yeah.
That needs to change. You need to tell me before we start that bracket.
Okay, in that case, I would like to exercise my mulligan.
Okay, we could have called that something sexier, but
we're here now, aren't we? So.
The mulligan!
It's mulligan time. I'm mulliganing you. Can you use it in a sentence?
Yeah.
Use my mulligan.
Yeah.
Have a mulligan.
Have a mulligan.
Go for a quick mulligan. English is stupid, isn't it? It really is. Right.
Mulligan. Sorry.
So, do you want to read out the list of games in it before I launch into what I'm doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. So, Final Fantasy 16 on the PS4. I believe that was reviewed by Fiona. Mm-hmm. Annoyingly, the black and white colours that I've printed the scores out on have now just made it where I can tell which ones are mine and yours, but the ones that were guests, we'll just have to.
We'll never know.
Guess. Pursuit Force PSP, one of the only PSP games that you reviewed so far. Tomb Raider Legend on the PSP. Motorstorm RC on the PS Vita. So remember, this is the 5 out of 10 bracket, guys. Yep. So these are games that we would recommend, sort of. Sonic Superstars on the Nintendo Switch. Fortnite on the PC, Steam Deck. Assassin's Creed Bloodlines on the PSP. I'm going to discount this one, Loco Roco Correccio. We put that in there, and I was like, 5 out of 10, and then you put it down from the scores. I didn't even, it's a 2-minute game, really. Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System. And I have to be really specific about the Sonic the Hedgehogs, because we start to run into a lot of Sonic the Hedgehogs, because we did that podcast where we did a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog. Katamari Damacy Reroll, I see what's happening here. Sega Worldwide Soccer 98 on the Saturn. Mario Golf Super Rush, reviewed by Paddy on the Nintendo Switch. Marvel Ultimate Alliance on the PSP. Borderlands on the PlayStation 3. Brutal Legend on the PC. Steam Deck, reviewed by Hakers. Trepang Squared on the PC. And Medieval Resurrection on the PSP. Mulligan
time. Right. So, Katamari Damacy. I'm using my mulligan because I gave it a different score to you, and they are both on the spreadsheet.
So, I'm going to save you a mulligan.
Okay,
I'm going to save you a mulligan there, because I don't think you should need to use that, because what we did last year is when we spoke about Lion King, for example, when I was on 3 times, we kind of came to an agreement almost where we were going to put it. So, I'm not going to be super harsh. I will talk about it. I'm not going to be, but if you want it to be, in a completely different bracket from the 2 that it's currently in, which we can reveal when we read all the list, that I think it's somewhere.
It's in 8 out of 10.
Is it 8 out of 10?
Well,
right.
I gave it 8 out of 10.
You gave it 8,
You
and I
gave it
get 5. So don't worry about pulling that out of the 5 out of 10 to try and. Do you want that to stay in the 8 out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
So let's.
But I was going to use my mulligan to take it out of both and put it in 7 as a compromise.
I think you just. Well, let's just. Okay, let's just put it in 7 out of 10, and don't use your mulligan.
Don't mulligan.
Keep your mulligan.
Right.
I'm going to be kind. You
Thank you.
keep your secrets and mulligans. So we're not going to talk about Katamari Damacy reroll. Yeah, look, we'll get to it. Okay, so I know you've probably spent a long time thinking about that and not thinking about the rest of the things I actually said.
Mulligan rules matter.
No, yeah, who knew? Who knew that they did? Is there anything in there? Having a look, 5 out of 10. Remember, so this is kind of like your middle of the road sort of games. That, yeah, there's definitely something about them, and they weren't horrible, and they weren't, something that you were going to write home about either.
I will still fly the flag for Trepang. Like the sound design and the kind of moment-to-moment combat alone are good. It's just all the stuff around it is basically guff.
Mm-hmm.
I can see what it's trying to do, but it just didn't land for me.
I think. Sorry. No. I was going to say I agree that I think it's got a good shout. I think that at the time, I probably because I end up giving that a score, and again I always listen to the critical stuff probably a bit too much, and I wasn't understanding there was an undertone of actually it's pretty good. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think I probably was a bit critical of that. And looking back at it, and like I say, I'll review the podcast to sort of listen to the sound. I listened back to that, and I thought, actually, Rich I probably didn't pick up on the cues as well as I should have done. That actually were like, this is a really good game. I just have problems with it. But I think I just listened to the problems.
Glass half empty.
Yeah.
The other ones that jump out at me are Pursuit Force, Tomb Raider Legend, and Final Fantasy 16. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people like Final Fantasy 16. I know a lot of people like Final Fantasy 16 a lot. I know a lot of people saw that Clive from Final Fantasy 16 is getting added to Tekken 8 and thought it was a great idea. I was one of the people that wanted Tifa.
Yeah,
Tifa makes sense.
Yeah. Was there a final pool for that? Because I saw those people saying, these are who we think will get added to Tekken 8 on my socials or whatever.
I don't know if there was like a vote or anything like that. I don't think there was anything like that.
I saw Tifa was like
a lot of people thought, Tifa kicks and punches things. Yeah. That would work in Tekken.
Yeah.
Rather than having someone in there with a giant flaming sword.
Hey, he's called Clive. All right.
Yeah.
He could do.
That's
He
not
could do.
positive.
He could do your accounts.
No offense, any Clives listening. But my point is,
fuck off, Clives.
like I was saying about Jedi Fallen Order, like Final Fantasy 16 is another one of those games that I can absolutely see why somebody would love it. I really, really can. And I know Fiona wasn't a huge fan, but nonetheless, as a sort of a technical showpiece for what a PS5 could do.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excuse me. What about... So you mentioned Pursuit Force there. I'm going to say no to Tomb Raider Legend on my part, just because this is the PSP port we're talking about.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
And I struggled with that. Tomb Raider comes up a little bit later, and there's other Tomb Raiders on this list that I'm a bit more like, actually, that would be... got a good shout of being one of the Kings of the Rings of its section. So I don't think that if I was going to say, okay, is that the best game that I played in that section? No. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would say that Borderlands and even most of the games, even Assassin's Creed Bloodlines kind of has a little bit of something about it. It's so dated. It's so dated, that game. But, and the enemy AI is ridiculously terrible. Like, it's just, and you kind of get that feeling of those games where, just run through this to the next area and then I'm free. You know what I mean? No one will bother me. Like, it was like Metal Gear Acid like last time. Right? I remember that sort of feeling that way about that last year, where I was like, oh, you know, I can just like get on with the game just by escaping this area and the guards won't follow me. It was the same thing really for Assassin's Creed. You just kind of go, I can see what they've done. And it was one of the games that I played through and was like, oh, that was nice and breezy. And I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it either. But I still thought it had a bit more about it than Tomb Raider Legend on the PSP.
I'll tell you what, Brutal Legend, like, is that
in there? What?
Yeah,
oh, it is, yeah. Sorry, I did mention it. See, this is where the lists start getting big, don't they?
Yeah, and it's, I think, out of all of those, as a quick example, you know, I was saying about Trepang and how well it plays and all that kind of stuff. The gameplay from Trepang is great. Everything else around it, less great. Brutal Legend, everything around it is great. The gameplay is not so great.
Yeah.
It's kind of the inverse for me. And of that lot, Brutal Legend is still something that will occasionally just worm its way into my head.
It's on Game Pass, and I was like, oh, brilliant, I'm going to play that now. And I still haven't got around to it. But
it's like we said at the time, you play it for a couple of hours and you're good.
Yeah.
You know, but there is something about it that definitely stays with you. So I wonder if there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. My personal feeling is kind of starting... It was anyway, I think, probably Trepang squared. Anyway. I think it probably deserved a bit more than what I gave it. You know, I don't think there's nothing that super jumps out to me, but I think remembering back to the podcast, it would probably be either Pursuit Force or Trepang squared, if I'm going to be honest, because I think Pursuit Force, I don't want it to be coloured by outside sort of influences and stuff, but it definitely, whilst I know you said it was really, really hard to get the mechanics of that correct, I know a lot of people love that.
They do. They really, really do. And, I mean, I did. Once upon a time, this is, like I was saying at the start of the episode, this is one of those perfect examples of, I used to love it. I went back. I don't love it anymore.
There's a lot of those games in here. There's a lot of, you know, like say that's what I was trying to say about Assassin's Creed Bloodlines, Medieval Resurrection, for example. They all just feel old, and Tomb Raider Legend as well. All just old clunky ports sitting on the PSP that you kind of go, the source material and the idea is great. It's just meh.
We've moved past it, and that's fine. Okay, but that is a very and Pursuit Force is kind of on its own in this sort of, especially in this bracket. Like, there's nothing really like it.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, there can only be one winner, and for me, I think it is Trepang squared. I think that
I would be very happy with Trepang getting it.
Like I said, I think it was probably my own fault. Really, I think it probably would have been a score up. At the same time, I'm quite happy with having that score. And it just being that sort of imperfect game with a lot of features going on that it makes it interesting enough.
Yeah.
So, cool. Perfect. Trepang Squared is our best 5 out of 10 game that we've played this year. 6 out of 10 is kind to us, if I'm going to be honest, considering you look at what's about to happen to us. Because there's not that many games in the 6 out of 10 bracket, which is interesting. I don't know what's interesting about it. It just is. 6 out of 10. Killzone Liberation. That's the PSP port. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. Played on the PC, I believe. Did you?
Yes.
Yeah. Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation on the PS Vita. Driver 76 on the PSP. Sewer Shark on the Mega CD. How did you play that? Sorry,
that was on the Mega Drive Mini 2.
Okay, cool. Pro Evolution Soccer 6 for the PSP. Olympic Gold for the Mega Drive, and Unit 13 for the PS Vita. So I think we're starting to come into a bit of a rich vein of all these Vita games that we start to run into around 6 and 7 out of 10, where it's like...
perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would say, oh, those games are like, you know, what are you talking about, 6 or 7? But then this is where, and I think rightly so, and, you know, like, yes, we're an amateur podcast and stuff, but certainly... and I'm not doing myself a disservice, but you really do a really great job of your reviews. And you try to do a really good job of your reviews. But I think that when you come to the Vita ones, I think you're just a bit more level-headed when it comes to them. So you might see a bit more of a glut of the PS Vita games around this area than where people might have been putting them as, you know, 8s and 9s. They were maybe just the better PS Vita games, but there just wasn't as many of them.
I think if I was reviewing a lot of them from memory, I would score them higher.
Okay.
Rather than, with knackered thumbs and all that kind of stuff.
And I think Unit 13 was what I was thinking of in this section here. And also, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, they're both Vita games.
Yeah.
Would any of them jump out to you as games that you'd have as the best 6 out of 10 game you played this year?
Unit 13 would stand a better shout just because Assassin's Creed, you got to appreciate the ambition behind it and the attempt to make that kind of cinematic story. I think Unit 13 just hangs together as a gaming experience on a handheld. It's just that Unit 13 really didn't give me much of a reason to invest in it. Like, mechanically, it's pretty sound, but to actually, give me a reason to play it more or go back to it, it hasn't really done the job. I think for me, the one that immediately jumps out is the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Which I thought might be the case.
Yeah, because it's doing something different. It's free, like but it falls into that similar bracket of a Hatterful Boyfriend, or charitably, you could call it a point and click adventure, but it's minimal effort or brain power to do.
Yeah.
It is effectively a slideshow. So I mean, if you're okay with that. In general, this is not specifically you, Faz, right now. Then you'll get on with it, I think.
Yeah. I am okay with that. I, at the time, said that I was very intrigued with that, and I was really happy to hear that the Sonic series was going somewhere different. That's what I want them to do. As you very well know, if you listen to that podcast, that I want Sonic Team to stop making Sonic games unless they do something different. Even though I love Sonic games, I want them to stop making them because they're really at dearth. But in this circumstance, I feel like for me, certainly from an experience of playing some of these games and listening to you play some of these games, I think there's better games in this section than that game. I think that's a different game and exciting to my sort of senses. But I know that Killzone Liberation was a very good PSP game, and they did it from that sort of, I guess, overhead isometric sort of game, yeah. And they went, we know that first-person shooters are terrible on the PSP, so let's do this with it. And it kind of becomes something completely different. And, yeah, they did a really good job with that. Like I said, the reason it's in the 6 out of 10 category, it wasn't perfect. But, I really did enjoy my time with that. As I did with the other PSP games that are in here, Driver 76, I was more impressed with than I thought I was going to be. I think that it probably just came along when GTA was already had its grasp on everybody, and it was like, and this just isn't as good as Grand Theft Auto, Liberty City Stories, for example, or Chinatown Wars. But if you look at it by itself in a vacuum, it's a good driver game, and especially on the PSP too. And even talking about Pro Evolution Soccer 6, that's probably the pinnacle of the Pro Evolution Soccer game era, if you will, around there. I'd say 6. I'd say 6 is probably the one that...
6 is my favourite.
Yeah, it's worth like 10 pence everywhere because everybody's got a version. Either on the PS2 or the Xbox or for the PSP. It's a really good Pro Evolution Soccer game, and it's a really good football game. And just because it is a football game doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve its dues either. So I would personally pick any of those over anything that I've heard so far, but then I'm not like super like, they're the best games ever, obviously. I enjoyed my time with all of them.
Yeah, I mean, Killzone Liberation, I think you're probably onto something with that, because I did play it a fair bit back when, Pro Evo 6 as well, but I played it more on Xbox 360.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if it's anything like it was on there, I can absolutely see where you're coming from. I think Killzone Liberation is probably a good shout.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really good, accomplished game, and they did what other games couldn't do and find their way onto the PSP and just find a way of making it work.
Yeah.
It was frustrating in parts. Do you know what I mean? There was parts where I was getting burned by pipes with steam and shit, and I was like, oh, this is annoying. But in general, I was quite impressed with that. So I'm happy for that to be our best 6 out of 10 game of the year.
Cool.
Killzone Liberation of the PSP. Okay.
Right, actual mulligan time.
Oh, me too.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first? Or shall we do the list first?
Let's do the list first. 7 out of 10. So the list start becoming a little bit longer, as you would expect from our average joint score of nearly 7. So 7 and 8 are absolute monsters. 8 is shit. I don't know what we're going to do about 8, but we're definitely not naming 2. So Pocket Final Fantasy 15, reviewed by Fiona. Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion on the Switch. Tomb Raider on the PlayStation 1. Dead or Alive 5 Plus on the PlayStation Vita. The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, the DX version on the Game Boy Color. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Master System. Beautiful Katamari on the Xbox 360. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters on the GameCube. International Superstar Soccer Deluxe on the SNES. Devil May Cry on the PlayStation 2. Everybody's Golf and Everybody's Golf 2 on the PlayStation Portable. Decathlete on the Sega Saturn. Pilot Wings and Pilot Wings 64 on the SNES and N64 respectively. Commando on the Evercade, which is a game that I played. It's part of that shortest podcast, the retro gaming one. Neo Geo Heroes Ultimate Shooting on the PSP. Excuse me, I'm running out of stuttering here. Freedom Wars on the PS Vita. Odin Sphere, Leifthrasir, Leifthrasir. I don't know why I went like the South African on the PSP. What happened there?
No, I mean, I don't know how to pronounce
Odin
it.
Sphere, Leifthrasir. Mortal Kombat on the PS Vita. Patapon on the PSP, very recent. And then last week, even more recent, Antstream Arcade on the Xbox Series S.
And Katamari Damacy Reroll.
And Katamari Damacy Reroll. Now in the mix. Okay. Out of the 5 out of... okay. Out of the 8... did you just think it was going to have more chance of winning the 7, or you think it's more of a 7 out of 10 game?
No, I personally still think it's an 8 out of 10.
But you've dropped it down to try and roll everything over.
No. But what I was actually going to mulligan, well, there are a few that I could be tempted to mulligan in this, right? Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening is one that I hold near and dear. So tempting though it is to mulligan that and move it up, I'm not going to. I've got bigger fish to fry here. The other one that I was tempted to move was Godzilla Destroy All Monsters. I was tempted to move that down.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think that score was possibly a bit inflated. I was a bit giddy. I like Godzilla. I think in the cold light of day, now that, now it's off the boil a little bit, it feels a bit more 6 out of 10. But I'm not mulliganing that one.
You're the first person in a Godzilla movie that sees Godzilla and go, oh, Godzilla!
Yeah, like, oh shit. And
kind of excited.
Oh, I should be somewhere else.
Yeah.
The one I would like to mulligan, in fact, do you want to reveal your thinkings first?
Maybe I'm going to pull my mulligan back. Maybe I know. No, I am going to do it. So, as boring as it may seem, I am going to mulligan Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX.
Yep.
And I'm going to move that up. I want that to be out in the 9 out of 10 bracket.
Ooh, that's a big jump.
I feel that when I reviewed that, I was probably sitting large on some of the problems for a laugh. No, just mostly because that's my first Zelda game, and there was so many things where I was like, oh, this kind of frustrates me, and this is hard, and this is tough, but it's a brilliant game. It's really, really good. And yeah, so I think that you might have done what I did with Trapang for you and maybe listened to my problems a bit too much and not captured my undertone of this is an amazing game. Good. But cool. Yeah, I want that. And that is when I invented the mulligan system, was the game
that was where the buyer's remorse lie.
Also trademark on the mulligan system.
Sure.
Mulligan.
Shall I do mine?
Yeah, go for yours.
Antstream Arcade.
Oh.
The Antstream Arcade, I now have it. I have.
Shit.
After
Oh,
your
no.
review, I have it. I signed up to it, and I am moving that shit down. That is not a 7.
That is so
That is
much,
a 6
that
all
is
day.
so much fun. I love that. I love that you were going to... Two of your mulligans were like, I need to move things out of this bracket. It needs to be out of there. Do you know what? I'm fine with that. Like, I when I said that at the time...
I didn't think you'd be heartbroken.
No, and you scored it. That I was always in and around that area. And, like, I even wrote down on my notes for that, I was almost like, right, okay, for me, this is good. For a retro gamer or someone that owns actual retro games, I don't think it'll be something that people would be in love with.
Yeah. Shall I explain my reasonings?
Yeah. Why not? Yeah,
quick as I can. So it started with trying to sign up for it, and the sort of user experience was not great on the devices I was trying, like through my computer and my phone and all that kind of stuff. It was doing stuff like, can you input your username? And then I would log out and go back in, and I would have to tell it a new username each time, and it was not remembering that I'd already claimed that one.
Funny, because I didn't have that experience at all.
Yeah, it just had a right hissy fit. So eventually I binned that off. Turns out it was on sale on the PS4, like you had on the Xbox. So I picked it up there instead. And it works better. It's not quite... I don't know if it's my TV or the PlayStation or what, but the screen size doesn't play well with my telly, so it goes off the top and the bottom.
Okay.
So you can't actually see some of the borders, which is like where the scores are for some of them. But there are no other options. There's no options for scaling the screen or tilting it. Like if you're playing a shooter and you've got a monitor that you can flip on its side, there's no options for accommodating that. But it's got some interesting games on it. It's got some games that were I to go and try and find them elsewhere would easily be north of £100. So for the year, for the value for money to just be able to play them for a bit, it absolutely makes sense.
It's a 6 out of 10.
It's a 6 out of 10. But for me, the killer is what you were saying about the input lag and the performance.
Yeah.
And like, we pay for a decent internet connection in this house. Myself and my wife both work from home.
Sorry, the way that you said that.
No, but we do. Like we pay through the nose for it because we got absolutely hammered during lockdowns from having to work from home and be on video calls all day.
Yeah.
Like we pay for a decent connection and it was still struggling. And the problem with it is that it struggles so inconsistently. If you're playing something like a shoot 'em up from like Cave or something like that, it will slow down at certain points. Like, it just will. But you can account for it. You know it'll slow down at that point, and you can compensate for it. With this, it would just, as soon as the connection decided to wobble, it would just have a hissy fit.
Consistent slowdowns.
Yeah, and you can't account for it. So it's like we were saying, it's great for trying, testing stuff out, exploring all sorts of different avenues. If you've not really dipped your toes in a lot of arcade stuff, it's definitely worth a go. But for my money's worth, you know, if you're going to play them, things like the Arcade Archive series or retro compilations and stuff like that are a better bet for sitting and spending like good quality time with it rather than that kind of big overview.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's definitely got a place, and it's definitely good if you are a newcomer. But I totally get what people have said about how it plays and even the advertising. I know we kind of touched on it. I've seen adverts where they make it look like you can buy a physical copy on PS5 with the box and stuff like that, and then have this tiny note at the bottom saying digital product only. Like, that's just fucking dishonest. I don't care what anybody says. I'm amazed that no one has, put trading standards on you.
You should kick off about it.
It's fine.
It's on the podcast now.
Well, I'm not that annoyed about it, but it feels a bit grubby.
This is what I meant. It feel like it was people who really want to keep retro gaming alive that just didn't know quite how to do it. And I think that my score was almost a little bit higher just because I haven't run into as many inconsistencies as you have. But the fact that there are inconsistencies between consumers in the same room who have bought the same year-long thing and have a console and a monitor in front of them, it's like, that shouldn't exist.
My router is in the same room as the console. Like, it's the shortest possible distance I could have had it, and it was still misbehaving.
That's fair. Okay, cool. Right, it's out. So, and so is Legend of Zelda. That moves up, and Stream Arcade moves down. Katamari Damacy Reroll has moved in. I'm going to guess that out of... It doesn't matter what else is in there. Like, well, I don't know. You're a fair individual. But I'm going to guess that that's going to have a big shout of trying to win this category.
I think so.
Is there anything else in there that you kind of go, oh, no, I need to... I mean, personally, anything I played could have a kind of shot almost at... I just didn't necessarily feel the same emotion about Patapon that other people did. I mean, that's probably really low for people in general, and I'm not even going to give it the crown in the 7 out of 10 category. Pilot Wings and Pilot Wings 64, like, just have limitations nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, you can see how they were once great for their very first game on their individual consoles, and I still think they're very good, and people should go away and play them. Are they the best 7 out of 10 game that I've ever played? Played this year, certainly. No. The ones that I would say that if I was going to put up for anything would actually be Devil May Cry or Everybody's Golf. Which I was so surprised how much fun I had with both of them, really. Everybody's Golf 2 would be the one I put forward, I think, just because that has a little bit more content to it. The way that they have made this sort of speed golf situation on a PSP and made it work so well on a console with one analog stick and limited ability in terms of trying to map buttons to it. Just, you know, how you can play a full golf sim and also have that crazy wacky side of it as well. You know, like, it's not in the 8 or 9s or 10s, obviously, but it's a very, very good golf sim game, and I had a hell of a lot of fun with that. And then Devil May Cry, those kind of games, the slasher hacker games, aren't necessarily my bag, but I had a lot of fun. It didn't outstay its welcome. It was a perfect sort of length of game. I think it's like 8 hours, 9 hours or something like that. And I just felt like I was just crashing through it. And I was like, this is great. You know, I'm just having a wonderful time. And it's kind of like, I thought it was meant to be really quite difficult. And I know I've just played it normal and there's hard and Dante mode or whatever it is. That is in. But in terms of just a straightforward sort of Capcom, like coming off the back of Resident Evil sort of thing, I thought the difficulty was perfectly placed and perfectly paced, and I haven't played many PS2 games as a maligned recently, and it's almost, and that is one of them that I have played this year and that I hadn't played before, and I had a really, really good time playing that. So they're kind of mine. How do you feel?
How do I feel?
Tell me how you feel about Katamari as well while you're there, and I'll maybe have my bit on that and
have a little sleep.
Well, no, not at all. I just again, I didn't gel with it. Like Patapon, I just did not gel with it as much.
That's fair. It's not going to be for everybody. It's the only game in this particular bracket that I have, or Katamari Damacy at least, have the soundtrack for. Like I really like the soundtrack because it is quirky, weird, different, eclectic. It ticks a lot of boxes for me. For the Final Fantasies that are in here, they're the kind of more portable ones. You can't really go wrong. They're pretty solid. All of the Vita games that are in this bracket, again, you will have a good time with them. I can basically guarantee that. They all would have reviewed much higher had we been doing this when they came out. Odin Sphere, for my money's worth, has a really strong shout at winning this bracket.
Okay.
To the extent that it was so very nearly an 8.
Leifthrasir?
Leifthrasir, I think, maybe. But I think the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Master System as well is really good fun. Like, it punches above its weight. However, for me, there is a bit of an elephant in this particular 7 out of 10 room, and that is Tomb Raider. I think you can't really ignore it for just the sheer weight of what it did. Odin Sphere is great, and I appreciate what you're saying about Devil May Cry and all that kind of stuff. I do have a soft spot for Devil May Cry, I really do, but I prefer some of the sequels,
which I have heard that it's sort of 3 and 5 are really good.
So I think for me, it's probably going to come down to a split between Odin Sphere, Tomb Raider, and Devil May Cry.
Oh, really?
And
So Katamari that's moved
three.
down.
I love Katamari, I do, but I am fully appreciative of the fact that it is an acquired taste and it is not going to be for everybody.
I mean, the thing about that game is that I like the quirky, zany part of it. It was just almost that... not that it's unplayable nowadays, especially because it's effectively a remastered version, like the re-roll. I found it a bit cumbersome. I thought it was going to be more fun than what it was for me. Like, as in, and the as we spoke about before with the games, the trimmings are brilliant. Do you know what I mean? The music is incredible and it looks great and stuff. The gameplay of actually rolling your ball around and getting it bigger, I found a bit like just. I've done it once, and I'm like, and I think at the time, we said, "Oh, well, it gets more fun because you pick up bigger things." And I'm like, "Great," like as in, I do that after my toddler, like like I effectively do Katamari Damacy after rowing at home. Do you know what I mean? Just pick up bigger and bigger shit into a ball and throw it in a cupboard somewhere. But that's maybe why I'm angry about it.
Go and pick up specifically like gold things or things that remind you of swans or whatever.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough.
Sometimes, and maybe that's why I'm not into it. The only reason I'm reticent about Tomb Raider is because of what's coming up in the next section.
Oh, you playing the long game?
Well, am I though? Because I don't know if that's got a chance of winning in this massive maelstrom of 8 out of 10. I'm trying to give myself a break before I list all them. Because I know for a fact that... or is it even higher? Is it? No, I think it is in there somewhere. That Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is the remake of the PS1, effectively the first game, that is in there. But then, is it, at the same time, am I willing to bow down to it? And the thing is, though, Odin Sphere... I feel like it's just the right thing to have a PS Vita game and think that, not almost like because it's just, it's right to have a PS Vita game on a podcast that is called Living La Vita Loca.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, it originally came out on the PS2.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? That's almost like the remastery kind of thing, isn't it? Or the remake or whatever it is. I don't know.
I mean, I would be well chuffed if we could get a Vanillaware game in there because, and it looks gorgeous. It really, really does. And it plays, it's like really good fun. I wouldn't necessarily say I regret how I've scored it, but
I think you sound like you do though.
Well, a little bit, but not so much that I use a mulligan on it.
No,
but
you'd shove it to the top of this list.
I think it would. Well,
there's some great games in here. There's some really good games in here. Like, as in, there's nothing I would turn my nose up at, really. Like, as in, I'm looking back at the list and I'm kind of thinking, I really wish I could play all these games again. Like, which I know I can. I know I can. It's just sort of it is funny. Like, even Commando on the Evercade, I had an absolute blast with for like sort of 3 hours or something like that, trying to do that. And so we are getting to the point where we are going to start to offend. Good games.
People, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to make an executive decision and say Odin Sphere.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was starting to feel...
Tomb Raider has had its flowers, and it's everybody knows it, everybody respects it. Odin Sphere definitely deserves a bit of love.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of about to give Tomb Raider Anniversary its flowers anyway. So that's our best 7 out of 10 game then, Odin Sphere. Leifthrasir. And
why do you always have to go louder with it?
Leifthrasir. I don't know, just because it's not even a word. Right, okay, the word it's the word. It's like Leifthrasir.
This is when you find out it's like from Norway or Sweden or something.
Obviously it's somebody's real word somewhere, but it's not, I'm really sorry, okay, if I've offended you. That's like your national word that you say to each other over coffee in the morning, okay? So, I'm not sorry. Hashtag not sorry. Okay, so that's just...
You're just putting off reading the list.
Yeah, I really am, yeah.
No. Shall I do it? Shall I do this one?
Actually, yeah, I've done the rest of them.
Right.
You go for this list.
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
Final Fantasy VI on the SNES. Final Fantasy IV on the Nintendo DS. Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions on the PSP. Sega Ages Alex Kidd in Miracle World on the Nintendo Switch. I forgot that was this year. Gears of War Ultimate Edition on the Xbox. Tomb Raider Anniversary PS3. Soul Calibur Broken Destiny on the PSP. Killzone Mercenary on the Vita. Balatro on the Switch, Hatterful Boyfriend on the Vita, Loco Roco 2 on the PSP, Typing of the Dead on the PC, Driver on PS1, Lemmings PSP, Night Trap on the Sega CD. Wow, I put that high up. The Quarry on the Xbox again.
No more mulligans.
No more mulligans. It's probably just as well. Burning Rangers on the Saturn, Fire Shark on the Evercade. Mario Golf, Mario Give,
See, it's
Mario
hard. It's
Golf
hard getting
Toadstool Tour on the GameCube.
That was Paddy, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Rayman Legends on the Vita, Siphon Filter Dark Mirror on the PSP, GTA 4 Episodes of Liberty City on the PS3, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen on the PC. Punch Out! Exclamation marks! Punch Out on the NES, and The Warriors on the PSP.
This is so hard.
Is it?
Oh,
is it?
Yeah.
Is it now, Faz?
Yeah. Come on now. Like, isn't there so many good games in that?
Oh, I'm
bracket?
not. I'm not disputing that. There are some crackers in there. There really are.
Are you just going to go straight Final Fantasy VI and be like,
of course I fucking am. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
try and shorten the podcast down with your bullshit like that.
It's not shortening it. Like, I mean, we're already well over. Oh God, hour 20.
It's okay.
But like, Final Fantasy VI is genuinely one of my favourite games ever that I've never finished.
Did you score that, or did I?
I honestly can't remember, but if it was the SNES version, it was me playing it.
Yeah, it was. You played it. I can't remember. I think we scored our own Final Fantasy games.
I think
it's your own fault that is in there.
Well, yeah, and I very, very nearly mulliganed it.
Yeah,
and then I saw Antstream Arcade again. I was like, no, that's far too high.
Right, okay. So
I would rather spite. Yes, I would rather spite Antstream Arcade.
Move it down to a bracket we've already scored.
Yep. Than save Final Fantasy VI.
Because I'm an angry man.
I've got such confidence that Final Fantasy VI can win this. I mean, Tomb Raider Anniversary, is a great game. It really, really is. Another personal favourite in this one, Soul Calibur Broken Destiny, is genuinely, I think, one of the best fighting games that you can get on a PSP or a Vita, for that matter.
Okay.
Like, it's that good.
So I liked it. I liked it more than Tekken Dark Resurrection now. But I've just read through the Retro Gamer article just done on Tekken from this month just gone, and how revered Tekken Dark Resurrection was, and yet I thought this was a better fighting game, and I'm obviously more of an amateur than you are at them, so it's interesting that you feel that the saying that it's not necessarily the same, but you think it's really, really good. Sorry,
as a handheld experience, really, really solid. I really enjoy it. I think for me, like, Balatro is, again, like, the one that does something different, does something unusual, came out of nowhere, really surprised me. Yada, yada, yada. Quirky, unusual thing ticks boxes. GA4, Episodes of Liberty City as well, would be a totally valid shout.
It's really interesting because that was kind of my shtick on that was, and I don't think I laid it on thick enough, and this will probably annoy people, especially since I've just literally picked up the Brady Games guide for GTA 4 for like a $5 from eBay, just because I kind of want to have it around, was that I genuinely do believe that whilst I know Nico is probably the best protagonist, I reckon, in Grand Theft Auto history at the moment, and everybody remembers the main game, I think as an experience, if you go away and play both of those episodes now as sort of 10-hour experiences, they're just such a distilled, amazing experience of GTA 4 that you could play those and kind of go, not that you don't need GTA 4 or anything, but they're just so good by themselves, and they're kind of not the 30, 40, 50 hours that you need to put into GTA 4, and have to go fucking bowling with your cousin and shit, or whatever, everyone's favourite thing.
I just want to really quickly tip the cap to Killzone Mercenary, obviously a personal favourite from the Vita. Final Fantasy Tactics as well is another PSP game that has, I think, stood the test of time.
Yeah,
I think, people do rightfully love it. But for me, this is a straight shootout between Tomb Raider Anniversary and Final Fantasy VI.
I'm trying to find my weapon to cast upon the rocks of Final Fantasy VI to see if there's anything I can throw at it.
Sure. Let's go.
You're normally way more reasonable than this, but that must mean how much conviction that you have. I mean, of all the games that I've played in here, there are so many that I would have, just sniffing around my greatest 50 games I've played sort of list. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The aforementioned GTA 4 the episodes, Punch Out is amazing as an experience. The Warriors on the PSP I've played really recently. It's just probably the most accomplished port of a game. The most. This is a PlayStation 2 experience on a PSP. There is literally no difference.
Did the brief.
Just so good. At Rockstar have just gone, right, okay, we are going to nail this, and you can just go, wow. The things, I am gonna pick a couple to throw up against it.
Yep.
I want to give a mention to, because I kind of had this is one of these weird games that I had a feeling in my stomach sort of about, that just I can't seem to forget. I don't think it's the best game in this list at all, but I really enjoyed The Quarry, from the last couple of years, and to see Night Trap in there and sort of see it as
that's wrong.
Yeah,
that's far too high.
But so it wasn't, I said this at the time, it wasn't an FMV game, but to play that sort of quick time event / just that movie experience, and to just absolutely, completely and utterly nail the teenagers in peril whilst the supernatural being prowls around the woods, and just to get that feeling, I've never played anything quite like it, and I know for a fact I'm a bit but it's also a bit of a cheese, a schlock fest and stuff like that, and which is it's meant to be, but even on top of that it is as well. So I can't say that that's as good as Final Fantasy VI on the SNES, but I did have a real fun time with that. You look at sort of the couple that Final Fantasy. So do I have to? I really enjoyed Tomb Raider Anniversary, considering I don't really have any sort of experience playing Tomb Raiders. That was I was a bit blown away almost by it, because it looked so good, handled so well, and I was and that's why I think in the previous bracket I was Tomb Raider 1 can't be as good as the remade version of Tomb Raider 1, surely.
All right, I've got two things for you. One of them is a very, very good news piece for you. Piece of good news. God, it's late.
Mulligan!
Yeah. The other one, might just help things along. So Tomb Raider Anniversary is the only Tomb Raider game that I have ever actually managed to complete. Played all the way through to completion. I enjoyed it that much, and I'm a miserable bastard. Final Fantasy VI. It is my favourite Final Fantasy to the extent that I own several versions of it. The SNES, if you were playing on a vanilla stock SNES console with a cartridge, is not my favourite way to play it. I was playing it on the SNES Mini, so I still had the advantage of save states and all that kind of stuff. That carries it a long way nowadays. In 2024, and most of the versions you're going to be able to play of it will afford some kind of quality of life improvement like that. So, Final Fantasy VI is my favourite Final Fantasy. The SNES version, I would argue, is not the optimal way of playing it. I think, therefore, it goes to Tomb Raider Anniversary. Okay.
I mean, I hadn't quite finished, not to extend the podcast out or anything like that, but so Driver and Final Fantasy Tactics are the other ones that I'm they are just really, really, really good. Driver, I cannot. This is going to go out, and people are going to people that I speak to on socials and stuff and things like that, guys, please stop fucking knocking on about, oh, the driver, oh, the tutorial, have you got past the tutorial? Oh, you know, there's such an incredible game behind that stupid tutorial that has become this white whale for this game. It plays incredibly for a PlayStation 1 game from 1999. It looks like shit. It is, but it is one of the tightest experiences that you can have driving a car in 3D. The soundtrack is amazing. Like it just peels everything back to this pure experience of just having such a wonderful time driving around a city. Like the time limits of, you know, the amount of times I've just squeezed to just within a couple of milliseconds of finishing it. And it's like, great job, you completed the mission. I'm like, yes, I fucking did. You so right. Like, it's just, yeah, the thrills I've felt with Driver over the years, there aren't many highs that have topped it. Is it as good as Final Fantasy VI? Probably not. But or is it as good as Tomb Raider Anniversary? Probably not either. If it had been remastered like Tomb Raider Anniversary, then maybe it'd become sort of, you know, like. And the thing is, there is a Driver higher up that might be worth its salt even more so. So I'm willing to let that go, but I didn't want to not speak about it. And then, yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics, War of the Lines, right. Is this the best game that I've ever played that I've felt no emotion towards? Like, is this a game that is this the most respected game? That is, do I just think, man, like, how well played, you know, that just, it is incredible. It is such a good tactical strategy game. I'm just not in love with it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I need people to know how good it is and how much I respect it. I just don't love it. Do you love Tomb Raider Anniversary, or do you love Final Fantasy VI? I think we're probably back around at those ones. I'm fine for those to be the ones that are. Oh God, I say I'm fine. I'm looking at the ones that I actually feel a little bit of emotion. It's almost like thinking, you know, like there are games.
They're not going in a bin or anything.
I know, but it's like the Lemmings on the PSP. It's just like, it's so good. Like, just so good. Like, you kind of go back and go, I had a great week playing that.
I've started Final Fantasy VI more times than I care to count. Right.
Yeah.
I've basically played like the first half of that game to bits. The second half, I am legitimately terrible at. Right.
Kefka kicking ass.
It's kind of like that's part of the charm of it for me.
Yeah.
Is the
you
fact
maybe never have to finish it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like a you know, because it's never ended. I always feel like I can go back to it, and I've got an excuse to go back to it, and that means I can keep playing it.
I have all the time in the world for that. That feels like video gaming, like distilled down to its purest form. Is almost like I just never have to finish this. I can just always enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's like an arcade experience in that respect for me, where it's like, I'm retreading the same ground over and over again, but. You know, I know what I'm in for, but I can approach it in a slightly different way, or, you know, blah, 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 blah. I played Tomb Raider Anniversary back in the day. I finished it, and I've never gone back.
Okay.
That's not because I have any kind of animosity to it or anything like that.
You know how good it is, but
it's the only one of the series, really, that I've tried to actively seek out like a physical copy of more recently. I nearly picked it up the other day, funnily enough, for the 360, I believe. But it is one of those ones that if I'm confronted by it on a shelf and then I see something else, I will pick up the other thing first. It never quite elevates itself.
I get that.
Me. But I can absolutely see where you're coming from. I think, like I said, what does it for me is the Final Fantasy VI. If I was playing it nowadays, it's going to be on a SNES Mini, or it's going to be on the Switch version, probably. You know, something that is not vanilla stock SNES. So, yeah, depending on how strict you're being with the formats that we've put here.
Gears of War, not even got a mention. Bless it. Bless its cotton socks. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that being the best 8 out of 10 game we've played this year. You know, it was one of the very first ones we reviewed of the year, and I have a similar sort of feeling towards it, that it's just at the other end of the scale, where it's like, it's a game that I've always wanted to play, and I just don't think I'll ever start it. In fact, I have started it once. Like, as in, I played about 10 minutes, and I was like, I really want to play this game. And the funny thing about Final Fantasy IV is that that's in this bracket as well. That the NDS version, so the kind of like not the remaster, but the 3D version. That fit, like, from what I understand and what you explained in your review as well, it's almost like that's like Final Fantasy VI Lite, if you will. Like, as in, and almost probably more my kind of game. Like, as in, where it's a little bit easier and chilled out, and you don't have to fucking wear belts and shit. Like, you know. So yeah, but I'm happy for that to be. You know, there's loads of games in there. Yeah, let's go for it. Final Fantasy VI being the best 8 out of 10 game that we've played this year. It's funny because Typing of the Dead's in there as well, and I'd say that's probably the most left field of all of the games that we've played.
It would stand a shot, or Burning Rangers as well.
Yeah, you really enjoyed that, didn't you?
Yeah, that was unexpected, that one. Yeah. But in terms of longevity for me, it's got to be Final Fantasy VI.
Cool. Okay, right, we're on to the 9s then. So thankfully the brackets shorten up again as we head to 9 and 10.
Done the difficult bit.
Yeah. So 9, Final Fantasy 15 on the PlayStation 4, reviewed by Fiona. Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. Suika Game on the Nintendo Switch. Motorstorm Arctic Edge on the PSP. Star Fox 64 / Lilac Wars, wherever you are in the world, N64. Ring Fit Adventure on the Nintendo Switch. Ollie Ollie World on the Nintendo Switch. Loco Roco, which is a revised score on the PSP. So that was when I yo-yoed, and I have reviewed it, haven't reviewed it. I have reviewed it. I'd give it 10. It's actually a 9. Driver San Francisco on the Xbox 360. Ninja Golf on the Atari. Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story on Nintendo Switch. Siphon Filter on the PlayStation 1. Musha on the Mega Drive. Gradius, this is the same thing as Darius. Gradius collection on the PSP. Ace Attorney Investigations collection on the PS4 by Fiona. Half Minute Hero on the PSP. And Tearaway on the PS Vita.
And Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening now as well.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, that needs to go into there too as well, yeah. So, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Right, okay. Anything jumping out to you in there that kind of goes, yeah, that doesn't, I'm not fussed about that. You know, do we whittle down that way, or is there any kind of go, that's fine, like you did with 8 out of 10, you immediately picked one, you're like, yeah.
There's a couple that are bubbling up to the surface for me. So, I mean, Suika Game, left field, quirky, unexpected, etc., etc. Donkey Kong Country, Stone Cold Classic. I don't think anybody would argue with that one. Ring Fit Adventure, again, like quirky, unexpected, different. I know you're going to go to bat for Ollie Ollie World. Driver San Francisco is great. In the cold light of day, is it 9 out of 10 great? I'm less sure. Ditto Ninja Golf. Like, I'm not sure Ninja Golf really warrants the score I gave it. I think I was excited.
You did that on purpose.
I did a little bit. Musha, I would argue that is happily a 9 out of 10 game all day. That is a personal favourite, to the extent that, weirdly, I'm kind of zen about whether or not it gets a look in, because I know how much I love it. Weirdly, for Final Fantasy VI, I still feel this kind of weird need to justify it, because there are so many Final Fantasies. And like, I'm weirdly like not comfortable with how much attention and love it gets anyway. Musha, like, I think if you know, you know, and that's good. Ace Attorney Investigations, it makes my wife very happy. So I've got to give it props for that. Half Minute Hero, I know you absolutely adored that, and that sounds like it would tick a lot of my boxes as well. Tearaway, again, like, it's unusual, it's different. There's something there. It's not really been replicated, and Legend of Zelda as well. That is a personal favourite and, legitimately lauded. For me, the ones that are definitely bubbling to the surface, Suika Game. Okay. I think, looking at this list again, the one that I am most likely to go to bat for is the Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story. I think like it's the Atari kind of museum thing that Digital Eclipse did is great, right? Ooh, just battered my clipboard. It's really, really good. Really, really solid. Lots of stuff going on. The Llamasoft one, there is just something about Jeff Minter, the guy, that elevates it. Just that little bit more, like, and being able to drill into things like how he wrote his newsletters back in the day, or having to schlep around all these computer fairs and all that kind of stuff. And that's before you even get into the psychedelic fun and games of what he actually managed to put together. It's opened my eyes to this whole like little corner of video game development that I really didn't know much about before, and I should have. I knew the name, but I didn't really know much of the stuff. I think it's not even an issue. My one critique of it would be exactly like the Atari one. It just needed a little bit more stuff from a little bit more recently than where it ended. And on the flip side, I have since gone on and, gone on Steam, gone on the PlayStation Store and picked up more Llamasoft stuff as a direct result of playing this game and realising, well, actually, no, I really, really enjoy that. Incidentally, some of the stuff is also on Antstream Arcade.
Oh, is it? Sorry, I have seen that.
You can go and play like Llamatron and all that kind of stuff. Well worth it. So I think for me personally, as a sort of a way of educating myself a little bit in an engaging and interesting way, it more than fulfilled the brief, and I really, really enjoyed it.
It excites me. Your review of that excited me, and the idea of this, and the Digital Eclipse just do a great job of sort of like the idea of this, this, I guess, effectively, which is, I know it is, it's a digital museum, but I kind of feel so much that I almost see myself walking into it, like almost like, this is the Llamasoft exhibit. You know what I mean? Like, I could just feel it, and like you say, and something about Jeff Minter and what you've spoke about before, and what I've read about him and stuff. Like you say, just it really does speak to you as something that that's so cool. It's just it's a game. It's a whole load of games and so much more than that as well. To put all that in a really reasonably priced experience, and think that we need to talk about this and make it such an important thing that the world knows about it. And like you said, now you know about it, and you can wax lyrical about it and go and find other things. It's a brilliant achievement. So, what am I? I'm gonna go the other way around. I'm gonna count things out then. I'm not in as much as Fiona spoke so eloquently about Final Fantasy 15 and how much she loved it and how much it meant to her. I'm much more interested in Final Fantasy 6, for example. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in the modern day Final Fantasies don't speak to me as well. I think I enjoyed her review of it and the story, and I think I'd probably go back and listen to that before I go and play the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like I got more out of that, the love for that, and then I probably would play in the game. The thing about, and it was weird because I genuinely, before I came to that, I was like, maybe I thought like Suika Game and Ring Fit Adventure, for example, I was like, they'll probably just fall away quite quickly. But I play, like, I tried to keep up with Ring Fit Adventure as an actual thing for my exercise, because I did say at the time it felt like quite revolutionary, and then I kind of fell away, as you do from exercise in general, and I went back to it sort of last month just to kind of, like, I was like, right, to get back to it, and it is so good. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just, I can't believe, again, for a second time I'm coming to it and kind of going, man, they just thought so hard about how you can just make a video game into an exercise regime and keep somebody interested. And I played more on the flip side of it this time, where I kind of did the exercising bits rather than just playing the adventure part of it. And even the interactivity with the ring and how much it detects your movements and stuff. Even that part of it, that is just kind of, I guess, what you call like a Billy Bob, basic, like the Wii Fit sort of situation. Yeah. Just brilliant. Just so well designed and so well made. I can see why there's so many of them lying around people's houses and people like, I'll sell them because I don't want to use it anymore. But I would really say don't use it as best as you can, and do use it because it's really, really great experience. So yeah, I think that Ollie Ollie World, like you said, that really does stand out to me. It's just one of those experiences that it just looks incredible, sounds incredible. It just makes me feel like such a better human being, like when I play it. It's so tactile, that is, in that you just, every input that you put into it when you're holding, like, for example, the Switch in your hand, you can just see it happening on the screen so well. You just know it's been built with so much care. So yeah, that is wonderful. Oh, right, okay. I need to put a couple forward, don't I? Probably against Llamasoft, really, because that sounds like where you've maybe landed. I don't know if you anything else, but the Link's Awakening, look, I've moved it around and I've mulliganed it into here. You know, if I don't play another Zelda game, I'll probably die happy. Like, I'll probably die happy anyway. Like, it's in, like, you know, like, but just, it's just really, really good. It's just a really, really good Game Boy game. And yeah, it just, the sense of adventure you get with that game is absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? And I can see why they chose to remaster it for the Switch, and I probably guess that actually maybe that would now be the quintessential way to play it, but I quite enjoyed going back to the sort of the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color version, you know, and really thinking, I bet this just felt amazing in like 1997. Like, so yeah, Half Minute Hero, and Gradius, whatever you want to call yourself. I'm just saying the things that I've reviewed now. I'm like Siphon Filtering, Loco Roco, and you know, and then Donkey Kong Country. Right, okay, I'm going to pick one game out of everything to say, right, okay, this is what I'm going to put forward at least. Let's say Half Minute Hero, because I'm just going to say that I do genuinely think that's the best game I've played in the PlayStation Portable. Yeah, I just so different, exciting, just so many different genres packed into such a small, tight area. You know, and I always say how much I bemoan how long RPGs take. Well, Half Minute Hero shows you that it can be done in half a fucking minute. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, they take artistic, you know, liberties with that and make it longer. But even then, though, they have 4 different genres of game within sort of like a 10 to 12 hour period, and it just, yeah. And there's shmups in there, and it knows how silly it is. It knows how much fun it's having, and it's like, and aren't you having fun too? And I'm like, yes, I am. I really am. And I know that sort of the half minute, what's it called again? Evil Lord, Evil Lord 30. That bit is a little bit saggy and doesn't fit in with the rest of them. And that's the only thing I would pick, I guess, like you sort of said about Llamasoft. There are things that make these not 10 out of 10 games. That's what makes it. But everything else, wow, what a lot of fun. And, you know, and I just kind of remember, you know, playing through that and thinking, yeah, like this on the PSP, just well done. And so that's the one I'm going to put up there. There's so many good games that I've not spoke about in this pile, but yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a pretty compelling argument. Again, like Half Minute Hero is one of those ones that you talking about it has made me want to go and seek it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair nod.
I think by the end of this, I will have been through Llamasoft, and you will have been through Half Minute Hero at some point.
Yeah, we'll end up doing some kind of cultural exchange.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll just shake hands and, you know, you'll give me some sort of horn or something. A drum, I don't know. Anyway, it's fine. I noticed that Lilac Wars never really got mentioned there. Like, is that not like?
No,
I think our question at the time was that a 9 out of 10, but then you said it was nostalgia, teary-eyed nostalgia.
I do wonder if perhaps it was. I like the kind of focus that it has. I like a focused experience nowadays. In fact, it is a really, really good example of one of those games that, while my personal tastes have changed, that is one game that I played back in the day, liked it then, I play it now, and I really like it now.
Well, it probably is worth it then, yeah.
Because, if anything, it's more in line with what I want from my video games nowadays.
Yeah.
But, arguably maybe not quite a 9 out of 10. I think it could arguably be an 8. But, for me personally, I think it's up there.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I'm just going to quickly run through all the rest of the scores now before we get into the 10 out of 10 games then, just for the listeners to have a little to remember what happened an hour and 40 minutes ago in their lives. So Carmageddon 64, 0 out of 10. 1 out of 10, Dead or Alive Paradise on the PSP. 2 out of 10, Street Fighter Arcade. 3 out of 10, Crazy Taxi Fair Wars on the PSP. 4 out of 10, International Track and Field on the Game Boy. 5 out of 10, Trapang Squared on the PC. 6 out of 10, Killzone Liberation on the PSP. A lot of PSP and PSV have done well.
Doing all right.
So 7 out of 10, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. Hellraiser. 8 out of 10, Final Fantasy 6 on the SNES. 9 out of 10, Half Minute Hero on the PSP. That's...
you happy with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I am. Yeah, I'm shocked at how well the PSP games have ended up doing. Like I said, because we've just played so many more
other things.
This year. Like, as in, I think I would have thought that number would have decreased and it would have been more different stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to be honest, like we've only got. It's not even really PS Vita. We've only really got one PS Vita game in the 10 out of 10, and I didn't play it on the PS Vita, but I did list it as a PS Vita game. But I think I'll probably need to change that because that's not true. So, 10 out of 10 games that we have played this year. We always say these aren't perfect, but they are near as damn amazing to what we expect it to be. So, let's have a little think about what we want to be our best, almost our game of the year, really. Hotline Miami played on the Nintendo Switch, and that was the game I mentioned about being the PS Vita, game that when it came out. I played that. Portal Companion Collection, so Portal 1 and Portal 2 packaged together on the Nintendo Switch. Street Fighter 6 on the PC Steam Deck from Rich. Rich also played through Thank Goodness You're Here on the Nintendo Switch. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the PlayStation 5, played through by Fiona. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which in the end only really got kind of a bit of a short review, but it was 10-15 minutes.
All it needed.
N64 from Rich. And BioShock Remastered on the Xbox. So, is there anything in there that you're not happy that you think...
would I revise it?
Yeah, would I have it in there?
Yeah, there is, actually. Yeah, Street Fighter 6.
Okay.
I would probably put that down slightly to a 9. I think it's kind of come off the boil a little bit for me. PC's still the way to play it. Steam Deck, it does well. It's obviously not the best way of playing it if you have a bigger, beefier PC on hand. There's bits and bobs around the kind of competitive end of it that some people aren't entirely pleased about at the moment. But, I mean, without wishing to spoiler things too much, personally, I still think it's in a damn sight better state than Tekken 8.
Okay.
But it's still really, 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 really good. I still have a lot of really fun memories tied up in, like, being able to play it when I was on holiday and things like that early. So that, to me, still means that it's a 9 out of 10 game with some fun memories attached to it, which makes it 10 out of 10. But that one I think is not necessarily in the running for me.
Okay, fair enough. I'll do a tit for tat then. So you scored BioShock 10 out of 10. I would have given it 9 out of 10.
Okay,
I had some issues, obviously smaller issues. It's still up there. It was, it'd be like a 9.5. You know what I mean? But it's certainly, when I look at what I've played this year and what games are in there, I don't think that sits in the same realm. That's almost like with Street Fighter 6. And again, that's just a feel, gut feel, like of almost like as in, again, that situation I talked about with Final Fantasy Tactics, like as in, I could see how this would have been absolutely incredible. Like, this Xbox 360 just killer app of how good BioShock was. And I was just, and then I played the remastered version, and I can see where people, like, absolutely legitimately, this could be their best game ever made. You know what I mean? Like, completely. It's just a little bit below for me. Like, it's just, and I think that's probably just the time that I've played it, and maybe it's sat a little bit too long for me, maybe. That's, while it's absolutely, I'm fine for it being the 10 out of 10 bracket, like, it's probably to the lower end for me, and not in the running for the game of the year, 10 out of 10. So, is there anything then out of the remaining games that jump out? I mean, it's hard. It's so hard. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I know how good it is and how strong that is as an entrant, and how much people sort of say, "Wow!" Even I think people were like, "Oh, remake is really, really good," and then like Rebirth came out, and everyone's like, "Right, remake can go in the bin." Like, Rebirth is the one, the open world, the Golden Saucer, Queen's Blood, like everything associated with that, how well Fiona came across about, how good that game is. It's just difficult for me to kind of go, well then, I don't know.
So
so much love for the original.
yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because you got to wonder if the game would be anywhere near as good if you didn't have the original, to build on. And I mean, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. You've always got to be careful saying like, oh my god, this is like one of the greatest games of all time, like soon after it's come out, because then a sequel will come along and it may well find a way of improving it. So I mean, Hotline Miami is a strong contender for me. Portal Collection as well would be up there, but for me, I don't think this is difficult at all.
Oh.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, there is only one game on that list that I would happily sit here and go, you know what, that's the one. Thank goodness you're here. Like, it's barely a game. But, my God, I have not laughed that much in a 2 to 3 hour span for, I kid you not, a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, it is easily one of the funniest things I've come across, let alone played. Like it was a better piece of comedy than a lot of comedies you would go to the cinema to watch or something like that. At least for me personally, there was a lot that felt laser targeted to my sensibilities, and I gotta love it for that. And kind of like what I was getting at with the Llamasoft thing, but kind of on the other end of the or the other side of the coin, I guess. Like, while the Llamasoft stuff was a great celebration of what Jeff Minter's done, Thank Goodness You're Here makes me excited for what they do next. I want to see where they go. Do they do a Turnip Boy type thing and kind of you come up with this extended universe type thing and you go through all these different genres? Do they do something completely different? I don't know. And that's what's great about it. Like, they have shown me that they can be unpredictable and out there and be fucking funny. And that, as a really short and sweet experience, makes me excited for what they do. And I hope they stick around.
I love where that's come from. That is in, it was so... I remember at the time, just... it being a 2 or 3 week period of everyone just being like, it was just on everybody's lips, just like, as in, and does that mean that it stays the test of time? Doesn't have to necessarily, like, as in, something can just be lightning, not even in a bottle, like, as in, but just like lightning for like 2 or 3 weeks worth of bottling, like, as in, it could just be like, wow, this is the funniest thing that we've seen, and it just, like you said, it fits with your sensibilities so much.
But I mean, we've got like Balatro in the 8 out of 10s, and that is another one that felt like it just burned white hot for a little while there. But I mean, Balatro's been on a load of Game of the Year lists, and
it's on
all this
Game
kind of
Awards,
stuff. All that. Thank Goodness You're Here hasn't.
I know, really weirdly, I thought that was strange.
I don't.
Okay.
Because it's not really that much of a game. Like, you walk around and you can occasionally slap things to interact with them. That's kind of it. But that's not what I'm there for. Like, if it's a 2 hour really condensed experience, like when my parents come up at Christmas, I plan to sit them down and play through it with them watching it, so they can watch it like a film, and I'll just be controlling what's going on. Like, that is not necessarily a game, it's just a different way of approaching the medium. And I think that gives it some value
Yeah.
for me. Like, they are trying to do something different. So yeah, like, credit where credit's due, as far as I'm concerned.
No mention of Majora's Mask from yourself so
Doesn't
far.
need it.
No,
Like,
I love that you're almost
doesn't
like
need it.
you're treating it with like almost like these gloves that you put it in like a case. You're sort of like, you know, and someone comes along and it's like, "Can I see that?" You don't need to see
Yeah,
it. You don't.
fine.
You know how good it is. You know.
what am I going to be able to say about Majora's Mask that hasn't already been said? You know, like, I really enjoyed it. Again, it feels like the Zelda that is most geared towards the kind of stuff that I like in my video games and my pop culture and all that kind of stuff. The N64 version is much better played on the Switch, I think, Switch Online.
Okay.
To be honest with you, that game is the only game that made me remember that I had a Switch Online subscription in the latter half of the year.
Oh, that's what that is.
I
Yeah.
had totally forgotten
Yeah.
that I had it, and I was like, "Oh shit, I can play all these N64 games." So it's great. It really is. I really enjoy it, and I think it's kind of similar to Final Fantasy VI for me, where I've started it loads of times, never quite got to the end of it, but it leaves an impression, it leaves a mark. And in that respect, Thank Goodness You're Here also falls into a very similar bracket for me,
Yeah.
where there is just something about it that will occasionally pop up. I still fucking quote Thank Goodness You're Here around the house, you know, which for me is a compliment of the highest order.
Of course it is, yeah. I mean, you know, I think we already know where the decision is, that it is going to be Thank Goodness You're Here as our 10 out of 10 game of the year. I haven't mentioned really in terms of the games that I've played that is in apart from BioShock. So I know you spoke about Hotline Miami and you know, Portal. I think they're probably two of the best games that I've ever played. Like, is in genuinely, like, is in Hotline Miami just touched me in ways that I've never been touched before by a video game.
Okay, that was violent.
Exactly, and that's what's so cool about it. Like, and I think I said this at the time. Like, as in, just hyper violence just tickles a rib in me. I don't know what it is. Like, as in, just sort of like, you know, seeing these sort of like 16-bit, sort of 8-bit, whatever bit it is, like little people, like just beating this shit out of someone with a fucking door or a shotgun and stuff, just blowing your way through a police station with absolute precision, and you've got to hide around the corner, and just everything's got to be timed perfectly.
And a hell of a soundtrack.
Yes, oh yeah, and I could just, like you said, you sat in, you know, Centre Parks that time and sat in a room and sort of played through Hotline Miami and stuff. I could just literally put my headphones on, sit in the corner of a room and just have that maniacal smirk on my face while I play Hotline Miami. And I kind of feel the same way in a way, probably on a bit of a lighter note, but also the same way about Portal, that in so much that you kind of, like you say, well, you know, the comedy you get with Thank Goodness You're Here and stuff like this, in, you know, it's hilarious all the way through, but also at the same time, it just... Yeah, I don't know. It just does that thing where every room you go into, you're like, oh, holy shit, that's a cool mechanic. Oh, holy shit,
the variety.
Yeah. So well written. You know, sounds amazing, looks amazing, and just has like that killer sort of thing where it's like, here's what you could do next. Do you know what I mean? And it just never ceases to amaze me, to be honest, as a game. So,
and crucially, is actually a game rather than a slideshow.
Yeah, but then that's absolutely fine. Like, I don't mind that, you know, that Thank Goodness You're Here is sort of like getting a little bit more popular. I want it to win the game, but you know, I also want you to know how much I enjoyed the other games in that bracket too, and I'm sure, you know, as you would know from being 10 out of 10. So yeah, that settles that then. So Thank Goodness You're Here is our 10 out of 10 game of the year. Okay, cool. Do you know what, as it always is, our podcast, which, you know, amazing fun, like, yeah, what a year, what a crazy ass year we've had. Like, it's so much fun.
But it's interesting doing this audit, and you know, realising
with your ruler lined clipboard, rule lined clipboard.
But it's, you know, much as anything, for, you know, me talking about my sensibilities and all that kind of stuff with Thank Goodness You're Here. Like, it is interesting to me to realise that, you know, I have very particular tastes nowadays. Like, I want to be surprised by stuff. I want quirky, weird, unexpected stuff. I want a bit of character and a bit of soul and a hell of a soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then if there's a game to go with it, then great.
You are Grim Fandango. Thank goodness you're here in a bottle. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for everybody listening this year, and we hope you enjoyed this review of the year as well. And sorry if we annoyed you or pissed you off, but also we don't really care either. So
you'll get over it. You don't need to listen to us. Don't worry about it.
So thank you very much, guys.
All right, cheers.
Bye.